Today's episode is brought to you by Elite Online Publishing, the brand building publisher. They help you write, sell, and market your book online. Check them out at eliteonlinepublishing.com. Also by Book Writing Retreats. Spend 6 days at the beach and have your book written by the time you get home. Check out bookwritingretreats.com and find your way to the beach to write your book. This is Hot Chicks Write Hot Books podcast. If you've always wanted to write a book or started a book and haven't finished it, we're here to give you the advice and tools you need to succeed in getting your book written and published. Hi, I'm Melanie Johnson along with my co-host Jen Foster. We have a terrific show for you today, a very special inspirational guest that I have had the pleasure to go to an event with, and that's where I met her. But first, I want to tell you to please make sure you subscribe to our podcast. We would love to have you be our subscriber. Leave us some feedback. We'd love to hear from you, and like us. And share us with your friends because there's so much good content. We had my neighbor the other day had watched our podcast and told me how much she was inspired by it. So I hope you are too. Today we have a special guest, Gari Meacham. And the first time I met Gari, I thought she was a man. I'm sure she gets that all the time. But I met her at a fabulous event. She is a 3-time author. She is a speaker. She is so inspirational and motivational. Oh my gosh, her energy when I first met her is just off the charts. When she gets up on stage, it's like all the lights turn on and she is just incredible and so inspiring. We're so blessed to have her here today. We're going to talk about her one book that just came out, The Spirit Hunger, and it's really focuses on prayer. Gari, welcome. We're so happy to have you here today.
Hi, glad to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your background and history to get us started so people can get to know you. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Sure, I'd love to. Well, I always say I'm kind of gutsy with God because I had a really bizarre childhood that led me to this point where I just was so kind of overwhelmed with life and needed help to figure out how to go forward. I grew up in Colorado, and my father was a bank president, and my mom was just a kind of a beauty queen from Maryland. He had married her there and then brought her back to Colorado. And their marriage was very troubled. There was problems in it, and one night my mom told him the marriage was over, and that night my dad was in a massive car accident which left him a quadriplegic, paralyzed from the neck down. And my mom, in order to kind of handle that, my dad had been very much a playboy and very, very popular and charismatic, but you know, the night of his wreck, everything changed. And so my mom started to drink to cope, and she was very sick with alcoholism. So being the oldest of 3 kids, I kind of just took charge. I raised my younger brothers and sisters, and I just said, well, by the time I got to college age, I said, I'm out of here. I'm done. And so I went to college and noticed that I started to struggle with a lot of issues with food. And it was at that point where I saw kind of no way out from my heartache with both compulsive overeating and anorexia. Believe it or not, sometimes you can be both. And I was just so sick in that whole life that I really just cried out to the Lord, save me, save my life, help me to live differently. And that's when everything for me changed. And I was dating a baseball star at the time. His name's Bobby Meacham, and he went on to be a first-round draft pick and very successful in pro ball, in baseball. He played for the Yankees. And so really our life has been amazing. Me just really surrendering over and over and over everything about who I am, to God. And the same for Bobby, really, as a ball player. He's a coach now. And our kids are grown. We had 3 kids ourselves. And, I just always had a heart to write. I wanted to write my stories and write the great things I had seen.
Have a relationship with God before this happened, and did Bobby have a relationship with him? And how did that come to be?
Yeah, no, I knew nothing about God. I mean, I was raised in a small, um, I went to a small private school, and I mean, I had heard about God, but it was very much like statue up against the wall type understanding. You know, I didn't know that you could love Jesus yourself and really have this relationship. And Bobby, after I changed so radically, you know, when I asked the Lord to be the Lord of my life, Bobby was kind of like, "What the world has happened to you?" You know, he just didn't understand that. But it was actually through baseball and through my love for the Lord that he came to know the Lord too. Baseball has great chapel that they call it baseball chapel. Guys come into the ballparks and talk and pray and explain things. So he came to know the Lord very shortly after I did. So we've served the Lord together for 35 years. We've been married now.
Wow, that's amazing, because a lot of times one person may get there and the other person doesn't. So you did that during your dating period and created a marriage and had faith together and had that walk together. That's awesome. So tell
Right,
us a little bit
right.
about, you started to talk about before I rudely interrupted you. Tell us a little bit about how you started to write.
Yes, sure. Well, it's funny, Melanie and Jen, maybe you have felt this way in your own lives too, but I knew I wanted to write when I was 20 years old. I knew I wanted to write a book, and I would just cry as I read nonfiction authors that taught things and explained things, and I just knew I wanted to do that. But it wasn't till 20 years later that I got my first book published. And I just say that as an encouragement to anybody that wants to be a writer. You know, if you have that desire, you stay with that. You keep getting better at your craft. I actually wrote for magazines. I wrote for a sports magazine for about 8 years, doing a lot of sports features and a lot of other magazines. I would have my own, my own articles or my own little column, and really just kept pursuing the craft, and then wrote my first book. It's called Truly Fed, Finding Freedom from Disordered Eating. It's actually my whole story about food and how I got free from all of that. And so that got picked up by a publishing house, and I was thrilled with that. But then it was about 2 or 3 years later, I got a multi-book deal with HarperCollins to write, just on a variety of topics, not just food. And so that's where my other books have come in. It's exciting.
Now, did you have a certain discipline when you were writing?
Oh, can you say that again? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Did you have a certain discipline to be able to write the content of your books?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, when I'm writing a book, I am very focused on, the beginning and the end, like how to get that pulled together. And so a lot of times when I write, I've actually taught a series of classes to people live on the topic. That's pretty much been the case with everything. I first started by teaching people the concepts of both, of all my books, Truly Fed and Spirit Hunger, Watershed Moments, and the new one that I'm working on titled Called, around calling. So I get to kind of test the material out with people, and I would suggest to anybody that wants to write, test your content out on small groups. I was fortunate to have large groups of people and have kind of events planned around whatever I was going to try to write on. And so I could really test it and see, what resonates, what doesn't. That's real important for a nonfiction writer, to have that audience and have your material really sort of experienced by others. And that tends to be the way that I go about it. So a lot of times publishing houses say it would be better if I did it the flip side, like write the book and then test it out in the bigger groups that I have some access to. But I just seem to do it reverse, because I really want to make sure that material is going to work, that it's powerful and meaningful.
Well, I think that's wonderful, and we teach all of our clients and those who want to become an author to think about what you're already doing that you can repurpose your content, And it's interesting that you just took the classes that you were teaching and put that into a book, but it was almost like your test market where you could actually get feedback and you can get more content because you're teaching that class and you're already writing materials to teach it, and then you can just compile it all into one book. So I think that's wonderful, and I think that's great that you do it that way, because then you know that that's something what your audience wants to know, because you've got the questions, you know, you're in the group. So
right. Right. Well, one of the biggest challenges for me was when I went to write Spirit Hunger, I had to, I was working with an excellent editor. This man does John Piper's work and, you know, all these really just deep authors. And it was the first time I really worked with an editor like that, and I was a little overwhelmed. But he kept pushing me, and I thank God for it. He kept pushing me to not just make it sound like a class, but to really make it powerful storytelling, which is always the challenge in nonfiction, you know, to make your work sound as if you're sitting down and telling stories with someone, but you're still embedding a lot of powerful teaching in it. And I give him such credit. He really taught me how to do that. And it just makes for a better book. It makes for a better experience for a reader.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important, that it wasn't just an editor. Like, people think of editors as just the grammar, but it's someone that pushes you and makes you more creative and takes your book to another level. I think that's why it's so important to work with someone, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's important to work with someone that will challenge you, you know, because if just your buddies and friends are reading your material, often they'll just think it's fantastic, and which is great. We need that too. But I think it's important to work with people that are going to have a good critical and inspirational eye, not just critical, but inspirational, to help us really know where to change and how to change. I think that's, you know, how to change our perhaps our angle on certain things, or our perspective on certain things that we're writing. It's critical. It's good.
What do you think you've done on the marketing side? I know you have a larger publishing house that's done your work. We have so many authors that have even gotten to the point where they've written their book, but they're like, well, now what? How do I make a platform out of that? Kind of walk us through what's worked for you in that arena.
Yes. Oh, wow. I know both you, Melanie and Jen, know that sadly, and I really say sadly because I think this is an important point, it seems that oftentimes publishing houses are looking more for that platform than even the quality content, because nowadays with social media and, you know, the popularity of you know, being able to really reach those broad audiences through social media, I think that it's become a little bit watered down, where not always the best books are making it. It's sometimes just the more popular platforms that are making it. But I will tell you that I signed a giant deal with Zondervan, which is part of HarperCollins, and I was virtually unknown at the time. But what happened after that was difficult, because the pressure then became, you know, we gave you this good deal. Now, why are you not performing, you know, to this point? Because they at the time were, I think, looking for another Beth Moore, and they said, you're it. And you know what? There's only one Beth Moore, and I'm not it. You know, I love Beth, but I just couldn't match up to those standards. And I had many, many tearful, sleepless nights trying to figure out, you know, how do I get more speaking engagements, and how do I do this, and how do I do that? And I ended up speaking to a talented editor that was at Zondervan, not the one that I worked with closely, but a different woman. And I said to her just tearfully, how do I do this? How can I increase this platform? And she said, Gary, there's no substitute for just the hard work and the time it takes to really nurture an audience, or a tribe, or a flock, or whatever you want to call it. You know, those people that are really going to get behind your message and that you can interact with and love. That's the key, you know, loving your audience and be authentic with your audience. And so, you know, I counsel countless writers and speakers, and I kind of reiterate what she said to me. just do the hard work of nurturing your audience. Don't worry about getting the giant numbers, that other people do. And the biggest thing about platform is not comparing yourself to other successful people. It is a dead end, and I see pastors falling to it, authors just falling off the road to the comparisons. You start to feel so overwhelmed that you're not as good as, or speaking at as many things, or your book perhaps doesn't look as popular as this person's, or this person's getting more attention, or whatever. Oh my word, I just think we just lose the power of what Christ is trying to do through our message and through who we are when we get sidetracked like that. But Melanie, what I do really to build that platform is I take a lot of speaking engagements, big or small. And sometimes people are reticent to take the smaller engagements, because they want just the bigger things. But I take all kinds of engagements, and really it's word of mouth. When you do well at one and you nurture those friendships and those relationships, then they will want you back, and they'll talk to their friends about having you on or having you come speak at their event. So I think just doing that hard work of nurturing your audience is critical.
Yeah, I think that's great, and I think it's interesting that you said, you signed a good deal with the publisher and with their marketing company. Did you say? But then they were looking to you to actually do it. So they weren't saying, okay, we've signed you up on 20 speaking gigs. They were saying, you go and find them, right?
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Important for just all authors and beginning or already authors to understand that you have to either hire a marketing person or you have to go and do the marketing work yourself. So whether you hire the person who knows how to do the social media for you or you actually do it yourself, you have to build that platform. Or you can hire, you can get on different speaking tours, and different people have that kind of thing in your niche, which you can find those out there, but you have to go find them, or you hire a marketing person to find them for you. And I think that's important for people to understand, because a lot of times people think, well, I'm just going to go get a big publisher and they're going to sign me and I'm going to make all these millions of dollars. Where, no, you have to put in the work, and I like that you let everyone know that.
Mm. Yeah, and you know what? It's worthy work. You think about it. I had a whole marketing team at my fingertips, through Zondervan, and I look back on that time frame. I didn't even know what was going on. I've never been impressed with myself. Why would you be? But it's just not. That whole scene is weird to me. But I didn't even know what I had access to, and they did work hard for me. But all of a sudden, you just kind of get that message that it's really up to you to nurture those relationships. And I think that we have to keep our eyes on the prize, which is God's glory, not our popularity. And I think that's the message that needs to be full circle, especially with social media. It's really a popularity game, and it's a lot of pressure for authors nowadays. I know many amazing authors that have sold a zillion books that are leaving the industry because they say they just can't keep up with the demands, which are not just to write good books anymore. The demands are to have this incredible presence all across social media and within the marketing realm. And so I think that I'm not discouraged by it anymore. I get it. You dance the dances that you have to dance for the glory of God. So if it's nurturing a Facebook audience or a Instagram audience, or all the new ways we have, besides those two really foundational ways, Twitter, all the new ways we have to engage audiences is great. Just like what you all are doing right here, right now. This is great.
With Meerkat on the other side, we've got a double audience going. But I love how you said it's really, if you think about it, more not about you being popular or you being the one, it's the message. It's about making the message popular. And especially, well, really in nonfiction, it's making someone else's life better, spreading that message of how to inspire, motivate, educate someone with the message that you have, and keep it about that and not about you personally. So you kind of have to take yourself out of that box and say you have to use yourself as the conduit, but it's really about the message.
Well said. No, you got it. That's exactly right.
Yep. And so let's talk a little bit about, give me your favorite successful story that got you the most out of your platform or book to spread your message, and what was your favorite, oh my gosh, this was the worst crash and burn ever, don't ever do this?
Oh gosh, I have so many. Well, I would say that in terms of the best success story and how something came fruitful from that, when I started to want to write my book Spirit Hunger, I had this really collection of experiences in my life where I just saw that I really wanted to get, I call it gutsy with God. Not just believing in him, but actually believing him, that things could change, that I could do things. And we had gone through a series of really interesting events in baseball. We had prayed for 16 years for Bobby to get back to the major leagues as a coach. He had been there as a player, but then he was in the minor leagues for 16 years. That's a long time. To pray the same thing. And I started to notice that there were women and men all over that were frustrated with prayer and belief and weren't sure, they believed in God, but they weren't really gutsy with God. They hadn't really stepped out to believe that certain things could change in their lives or in the lives of the people they prayed for. So I had this idea, and I kept trying to get it out, Truly Fed, my first book, was already published. But I was trying to get this idea out and was not having any success. Often what you send out just sits on a desk, somebody's desk somewhere, and then goes in the trash in terms of proposals and stuff. So I decided to go to a writers conference, which was in California, Northern California, Mount Hermon Christian Writers Conference. So I went there, and I just pitched and pitched and pitched. It was miserable. I was just so miserable because I hate having to do that. But I just kept saying, I think we have this longing inside this, our spirits are hungering for something, and it just feels like people aren't getting that satisfied. And so I kept describing that in this gutsy thing with God. And by the end, one of the editors from a large house there pulled me aside and said, I think we want you. And then a couple other publishing houses got in that game, and they all decided I got to choose where it was going to go. But I got to thinking about it. Really, that came from desperation. Like, I have this message that I know is good and I know should get out, and how am I going to get it there? And so I did my work. I researched, where are these new first-time authors getting picked up? Where are these things happening? And I went to this conference, and it was just a real success time for me. I also have to joke that I had wanted an agent, a literary agent, and I wanted one particular one, this woman that I wanted so bad, and she rejected me the first time I tried to get her. She said, no, thank you, to representing me. And then this second time I went with Spirit Hunger and that idea and that whole gutsy thing, I just practically knocked her down on the sidewalk and said, I want to sit down and talk to you. And we did, and she didn't even remember rejecting me. She didn't even remember me at all. But this time she said, I want you. And, we wanted each other. And so it was really neat. And I think I just share that just to say, the perseverance. If you have a message to share, if you believe God has put something on your heart that's important for people to know, then you just really need to sort of stop at nothing to get that message out. And in terms of crash and burn, oh gosh, I could go on and on and on. Really, to be honest, the last book that I was to do with Zondervan, we had to take it off the table because of the whole push for popularity. They wanted me to write on topics that I had no knowledge of, and I was trying to do it because I'm that type of person. If they tell me to do something, I'll do it. But I couldn't make it work. They weren't anything that I felt called to write or that I knew anything about. They were just trying to get something that perhaps would sell, and so it just didn't work out, and that was painful. I cried so many tears over that. But you know what? God had a different plan, and it was a good plan. And so I had to just let that go. And, you know, again, it's not about us. It's about his message coming through us and his glory. And so I don't know, Melanie, it's a great question. I hope I answered it okay. But
I think that was great. And let's get into the meat of your book now. I just love how you put, you know, be gutsy with God. I just, that's such a great way to put it, because so many of us are timid and step back and don't realize to ask for more and to push and to be gutsy and have that belief. So give us some key elements to your book that show that.
Yes, well, I feel that, you know, I kind of start the book out talking about these longings that we have. And everybody has these longings inside. We're built with them. God created us with them. But we often just fill them with such lesser things. And our real longing is to engage God, like to engage him in this powerful way. And the way we engage God is prayer. And I talk about, I love this quote from Richard Foster, who's one of the great writers on prayer and the discipline of prayer. And he says, real prayer comes not from gritting our teeth, but from falling in love. Because when I wrote Spirit Hunger, I researched and found that there were more books written on prayer than any other topic in Christianity. And I went, great, now I'm writing another one, you know, what am I going to say that's different? But my whole thing is I shared a lot of stories in my own life of times where I was just up against the wall. One of the things I love in Spirit Hunger is when I talk about my oldest daughter, Brooke. We raised a prodigal. She became a prodigal after a horrible event her freshman year of college. She was drugged and raped. And so that started just a digression in her life of drinking and cutting and bulimia and really just giving herself away sexually. And so at a point of absolute insanity for me as a mother, and feeling that she might not make it through her life. I mean, she was just on the verge of such death. The Lord showed me a way to pray through that, because I remember I was getting dressed, I was standing at my closet, and God just said to me so clearly, do you believe I'm bigger than this destruction? And I weakly said back to him, yes, but inside, no. I mean, it just seemed so overwhelming. And it was then that I went after this new way to pray, and I talk about it a lot in Spirit Hunger, based on a scripture in Habakkuk that says, record the vision, so the one who reads it may run, and though it may tarry, wait for it, it will come. So I started calling this vision prayer, and I started to just really pray about what specific things I wanted to see in my daughter's life as her womanhood progressed. And oh my goodness, I wrote it all out, because I talk about in the book, I talk about the difference between ditch prayer, when we pray just from sort of like in a ditch and in a rut, and vision prayer, when we pray vision, because the Bible says people without vision perish. And I believe prayer without vision perishes. And so I started to pray a whole different way, and it was life-changing for me. I mean, just absolute life-changing. And we just celebrated Brooke's wedding in Hawaii in January, and it was the fruit of 8 years of vision prayer. And I think sometimes we just need help, you know, to understand how to engage God. Jesus said to ask and to seek and to knock. And so it sounds so easy, but it really isn't, you know, because I think the asking starts us, and the seeking frustrates us or confuses us, and then the knocking just plain irritates us. So I really talk about all that and the reality of it.
So what would you say are the 3 things to create a vision prayer that you need?
Yes. Well, with vision prayer, I think you need to be very authentic with God. It's not formulaic, you know, where it's like this, and this, you know. I think first off, you need to be very authentic and say, this is my heartache, this is my surrender, this is my longing. And so just that authenticity first. Second, you need to be prepared, like the scripture says in Habakkuk, to record the vision. So get a tablet, paper, pencil, whatever, your laptop, and start thinking in terms of what you're praying for. For instance, with Brooke, some of the things I was praying for is that she would see herself as God saw her. That she would stop some of the absolute destruction in her life. And the only way that happens would be through the miraculous unlayering of the way that she had lived. And so I prayed specifically for every layer of her life, and I wrote it all out, the layers of self-destruction, mutilation, bulimia, all the things that she was doing. I really had a specific prayer plan for that. And then going forward, a man that would someday love her with all her scars. And I talked about that man and just really wrote out my heart cry for her. And then I say that you choose 2 or 3 scriptures, not a lot of scriptures, just 2 or 3 to lay over this. And every day when you start to feel the worry come on, you start praying your vision prayer. And I kept mine on a little card with me. I carried that thing for a good 4 or 5 years before I rewrote it. It was practically bare. I had held it and touched it and cried on it so long. But I really specify how to do that well in the book, and the difference between ditch prayer and vision prayer. Because sometimes what we think is praying with vision or with hope is really just reactive, to what we're seeing and what we're feeling. There's no proactive prayer or no proactive vision there as to how we're asking God and seeking and knocking, for change. Does that answer your question,
Yes.
Melanie? Is that okay?
Awesome.
Good.
And you left enough for us to kind of whet our appetite. So for those of you who'd like to know more detail about how to pray with vision, and how to quench that hunger for prayer that your soul is searching for, please get Gary's book. Gary, tell us your website and where they can get in touch with you to be a speaker for their event and to get your materials.
Yes, great. Well, you can reach me, and please do. I love hearing from people. It's my favorite thing. You can reach me just at GariMeacham.com. It's GariMeacham.com. And all my books are available, everywhere. Amazon is a great place because they're cheaper. But I don't sell the books from my website, but Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Lifeway, anywhere that you like to get books, you can get them. And Spirit Hunger is also on an audiobook. And there's a workbook that I wrote and a DVD series that if you want to gather people and just do it, or if you're from a church and you want to do it in a group at a church, it's a great study to do in that way as well.
Great. We'll put your website at the bottom so people can go there. And we'll also put your Amazon book on our website at eliteonlinepublishing.com.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming, Gary. You were so inspirational. I hope, I know I got a lot out of it. I'm sure everybody did. And Meerkat, thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed it as well. So please subscribe to Hot Chicks Write Hot Books podcast. Hit that subscribe button. Push it, push it, push it, and share our podcast with all of your friends, because we're going to have more author experts on to share how they wrote their books and their expertise so we can learn and grow and be inspired. So we'll see you next time. And if you would like your book published, we would love to help you at Elite Online Publishing. And please come to one of our book writing retreats. You can find us at Elite Online Publishing or bookwritingretreats.com. And again, we'll have Gary's book and all her materials there for sale. We'll include, Gary, your workbook and your audio series and DVD series too. We'd love to have all of your stuff there so our following can find that too. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Today's episode is brought to you by Elite Online Publishing, the brand building publisher. They help you write, sell, and market your book online. Check them out at eliteonlinepublishing.com. Also by Book Writing Retreats. Spend 6 days at the beach and have your book written by the time you get home. Check out bookwritingretreats.com and find your way to the beach to write your book.